I'm Alma Langlois, and I love a good anti-hero. I know there are plenty of books out there about well-adjusted people who want to get along with everyone, but I hate those people in real life, so I sure as hell don't want to read about them.
Some people are okay, but mostly I just feel like poisoning everybody.
Today I've got another book and movie comparison for you. The book has the honor of being my favorite book from when I was a teenager and features one of my favorite characters.
That guy rules!
It's a feel-good story with something to offend everyone, so if you're the type who needs a trigger warning,
suck on this.
I'm talking about Filth, written in 1998 by Irvine Welsh and adapted into film by Jon S. Baird in 2013. Our romantic hero is Detective Sergeant Bruce Robertson, Robbo to his frenemies, a corrupt, completely misanthropic Edinburgh cop who amuses the reader while abusing everyone and everything. He's the lead investigating officer on a politically charged murder case involving an African ambassador's son, but bigoted Bruce isn't all that interested in solving the crime. That takes away too much time from his alcoholism, binging on cocaine, gorging on takeout curry, and serving up some prime Scottish beef to a parade of emotionally shattered mistresses and prostitutes.
I find all this just a little bit sordid.
Besides, he's got to gear up for a debauched holiday of sex and drugs in Amsterdam.
Hell yeah.
He lusts after a promotion to inspector, amusing himself with Machiavellian schemes against his co-workers, who he thinks are all idiots. Although, I don't know, Gus is pretty cool.
Every day is Valentine's Day.
And you'd be Cupid, eh?
I'm the very boy, Robbo.
Some man.
I'm the very boy.
Particular contempt is reserved for his supervisor, Bob Toll, who he dismisses as a useless buffoon, and Amanda Drummond, a politically correct police sergeant who's a pure creature of personnel.
Personnel? That's for assholes.
Personnel is now human resources, but it's still for assholes. Her contribution to the investigation is organizing a mandatory racial sensitivity course. It's one of those dealies where sheltered professional class women lecture other people about racism.
Oh my God, I guess I do like black people. It just took a white one to prove it to me.
When Robbo's not blowing out his dopamine receptors, he wallows in regrets, aching for the return of his estranged wife Carol and their young daughter Stacy. There are other sizable flies in the Robertson ointment as Bruce suffers insomnia and panic attacks, not to mention being plagued by an aggravating below-the-kilt rash.
Ew!
He also finds a new friend in a tapeworm living in his intestine, nagging at his conscience and illuminating the past traumas he's fought hard to repress. You think this sounds bad? Don't worry, it's gonna get a whole lot worse. I've always been a huge Scotiaphile. I love Scottish people, I love Scottish culture, and I love the Scottish accent. I'm half Scottish myself. I got the sardonic sense of humor and the feisty disposition. Irvine Welsh, Edinburgh native and son of a dock worker. He has a knack for tapping into Scottish male id and irreverently examining Scottish stereotypes.
Scotland. This nation brought the world television, the steam engine, golf, whiskey, penicillin, and of course, the deep-fried Mars bar. It is great being Scottish.
A lot of stereotypes about Scots are similar to stereotypes about Southerners. I think these are the same people I've seen hanging out at the liquor store in their pajamas at 9:30 on a Wednesday morning. Welsh, having achieved international fame and fortune with his first novel, Trainspotting, said he wanted to write something incendiary, totally crazy. Having written about the Skag Boys, he wanted to write about the other side of the coin, the police.
I think the last time I ever spent a night in the police cells would be... This is embarrassing. It'd be maybe the late 90s.
Oh.
God.
Filth was also partially inspired by Welsh's disgust with police hypocrisy. Around the time of its writing, the Edinburgh police were cracking down on ecstasy use and raves. But Welsh, then living in Amsterdam, met many Scottish police officers on holiday there to partake in sex and drugs. Welsh has said in many interviews that too many books are self-important and boring, and with his writing, he wants to create the same visceral reaction and emotional response as music. Welsh says, "When I was trying to write originally, because I was raving all the time, I was trying to get a 4/4 beat on the page. That's why I wrote in the vernacular, because it's a performative thing. It's got a beat to it, you know? The cover of Filth alone sparked outrage from British law enforcement, police officers tearing apart publicity material for the book for its depiction of a porcine police officer. The book was a hit in the UK, but more of a cult item here in America. Most of the critics and readers at the time focused on the book's grossness, the shameless despicability of its protagonist. But underneath the bodily fluids and shock value, much like its protagonist, Filth has a tender heart. To call Bruce a racist or a misogynist is an understatement, because I think Bruce is a stone misanthrope who despises everyone and everything.
I'm a loner, Daddy. A rebel.
Bruce Robertson presents himself as a gleefully amoral bad bastard who doesn't care about anyone or anything. But Bruce isn't a reliable narrator. Moments of vulnerability creep in, deftly woven in by Welsh. The biggest example being the scene where Bruce attempts to save the life of a man having a heart attack while out Christmas shopping. He offers genuine empathy to the man's wife, even fighting back tears as he comforts her. But when a reporter asks Bruce how the man's death made him feel, Bruce gets angry, and the tough facade he uses as a shield goes back up. The question, how did it make you feel, haunts Bruce throughout the rest of the novel, highlighting his avoidance of contending with his emotions.
You must see some terrible things in your line of work.
I do. I really do. You know? But you just deal with it.
Much like many people with trauma, the painful emotions he suppresses manifest physically, symbolized by his rapidly spreading stress-induced rash and the tapeworm, which is literally eating him alive. When I read Filth for the first time, I was initially entertained by Bruce. He's charismatic and fun in a warped way. But it's mostly because he's so gleefully reprehensible. He has a cutting wit, and his sardonic observations are hilarious. But as the book went on, I found I had come to care for him, a testament to Welsh's skill as a writer. I was so haunted by the book, the day after I finished reading it, I picked it up and started reading it all over again. Bruce is a complex, compelling character, a mass of contradictions.
He's a prophet and a pusher, partly truth, partly fiction. Walking contradiction.
He's a sensitive man deep down, but relishes in cruelty and debauchery.
Job centre's that way, Santa sweetheart.
Merry Christmas anyway, Paul.
Heard it's gonna be a cold one, mind you. Have a nice day.
He's both defined by and hates his job.
This is the wonderful thing about being Polish, Ray. It doesn't really matter if everybody hates your guts as long as they're civil to your fucking face. Is that not right, Maisie? Same rules apply, darling. Same rules apply.
He vacillates between cockiness and self-loathing. He hates junkies and criminals, but he is one himself. Nationalistic on the one hand, he dismisses Scottish Parliament as a load of nonsense on the other. He also despises the working class, but he comes from a working-class coal mining family, even surprising his colleagues by making a pro-union argument. And he hurts the people closest to him, all because he's terrified of being vulnerable.
Who do we trust, Bruce?
Why, no one, of course.
Not your friends, not your family, not even yourself, Bruce. Especially not yourself, eh?
When asked by his skanky sister-in-law why he delights in other people's misery, he responds that it's a form of joie de vivre. There are a finite number of bad things in the world, and if they're happening to other people, at least they're not happening to him.
Fucking bitches left me. Christmas fucking day. And the bitch leaves me.
Bruce wants to be powerful to protect himself, but instead he's deeply wounded, afflicted with PTSD symptoms he can't cope with, plagued by resentment, shame, and guilt.
I'm not well.
What's wrong with you, man?
I hear voices, Chrissy. See things all the time. Do you ever hear them?
He constantly lashes out at others to help him feel better about himself, and to protect himself from being hurt.
Why'd you bully me, Bruce?
What?
Why'd you do? Because I can't fucking help myself.
Ironically, he discovers he misread Toll, who is much sharper and more observant than Bruce gave him credit for. And despite being one of the people he despises the most, he finds Toll actually cares about him and is trying to look out for him. A lot of reader reviews made the point, we all know somebody like Bruce Robertson, but I'll go them one better. Especially if you've had some trauma in your life. We're all a little bit like Bruce Robertson. These kind of characters are so close to my heart. Their struggles are cathartic, and they make us feel not so alone. They're also a warning of what can happen if you go too far over the edge, and maybe even a comfort that, well, I can cut myself some slack. Maybe I didn't handle things so badly.
You see, there's some really shifty-looking characters in here tonight, and I'm just trying to blend in.
One overarching theme in both the book and the film is the Scottish preoccupation with guilt. One review of the novel I read years ago joked that some Scots feel guilty because they don't have enough guilt. Welsh, in an interview with SF Gates, says Bruce believes he's a bastard due to his original sins. He's full of buried guilt. This leads to his mental illness. I think self-loathing is a Scottish quality, because we're a colonized nation.
Doesn't it make you proud to be Scottish? It's shite being Scottish! We're the lowest of the low! The scum of the fucking earth! The most wretched, miserable, servile, pathetic trash that was ever shot into civilization! Some people hate the English, I don't. They're just wankers. We, on the other hand, are colonised by wankers. Can't even find a decent culture to be colonised by.
The predominant religions being Catholic, Presbyterian, and Calvinist probably aren't helping. Welsh follows in the tradition of past Scottish writers like James Hogg, in which guilt-ridden characters face judgment for crimes past. Underneath it all, Filth is a scathing critique of the entitled, consumeristic culture of self-centered, cutthroat competition instilled by the Thatcher government and then carried forth by the new Labour government. Bruce relentlessly consumes alcohol, drugs, pornography, sex, and junk food to make himself feel better, but nothing alleviates the pain. The tapeworm inside him is initially the ultimate mindless consumer with its repeated mantra of eat, eat, eat. But he eventually advises Bruce, consume to your heart's content or your soul's destruction, whichever comes first. Bruce also remarks that he feels a sense of loathing for his long-suffering friend Bladesy, because it doesn't take much for Bladesy to be happy, unlike Bruce, for whom everything will never be enough. It's telling that Bruce has a breakdown while struggling to do some last-minute Christmas shopping for his wife and daughter in the mall, perceiving the crowds of Christmas shoppers as predatory ghouls. Bruce also scornfully notes that personal tragedy has lost all meaning. It's become another spectacle to be eagerly consumed. In a country already struggling to preserve its national identity, there's also a theme of authentic culture being replaced by corporatism. Bruce laments that Hogmanay, Scotland's New Year celebration, was once a traditional Scottish affair, but it's become another Edinburgh festival for tourists.
Pardon me, may I use your bathroom? Thank you.
From encroaching corporatism springs the equal ops initiatives Bruce regards with contempt, which has since evolved into DEI. Welsh satirizes Bruce's bigoted attitudes while critiquing equal ops policies as a divide-and-conquer tactic by the corporate class against the working and middle class.
We have sort of a problem here.
Bruce's co-worker and frenemy, Ray Lennox, cynically observes that equal ops started when mass unemployment took its toll. To prevent upwardly mobile working-class kids from taking jobs from the sons and daughters of the rich, privileged minorities are brought in as a Trojan horse. Ray sneers that, of course, nothing really changes, except blacks get to be truncheoned by a black police officer once in a while.
That sounds very stylish.
Thatcher's defeat of the coal miners' strike plays a large part in Bruce's backstory, representing the fracture between Scotland's industrial past with the new post-industrial service economy.
So that Bill Lumberg's stock will go up 1/4 of a point.
What made you join the force, Bruce?
Police oppression, brother. I'd witnessed far too many cases of it in the mining community I grew up in.
You wanted to stamp it out from the inside?
No, I wanted to be a part of it.
With Filth, Welsh also critiques the UK's crime policies. Bruce notes that big operators are flooding the city with drugs. Most of the people they arrest are students or daft schemies with some hash or a few pills. Toll also states that he's had it with the modern police force, feeling that the law spends too much time demonizing ordinary people who are just trying to get on with their lives. Society is evolving, and the law hasn't kept up.
I want you to show this bastard who the hardest firm in this city really is, okay? Nobody steams in like the Edinburgh Police. Go.
Right.
Wait 2 seconds. He'll be firing into him and we'll catch the stoat in action.
Another tip for good luck?
On duty.
Bruce believes that being a police officer makes him powerful, but in the novel, the police are ultimately just cogs in a much bigger machine, used as guard dogs for the rich and powerful who care little about them. Filth, like Welsh's other work, is written in Scottish dialect, Bruce's narration delivered in a conversational stream of consciousness style. In the 90s, Welsh was one of a group of emerging Scottish novelists such as James Kelman, Janice Galway, and Duncan MacLean, who wrote in Scottish vernacular and about working-class life. In short, their work was a giant middle finger to the prudish gatekeeping publishing establishment in London. Kevin Williamson, a poet and founder of the early 90s literary mag Rebel Incorporated, stated, "I wanted stories written in Scots, urban Scots, not historic Scots or anything like that. I wanted the voice of the football terraces, the voice of the parties, the clubs, the pubs, and the housing states." For these writers, writing in Scots was, as Williamson put it, giving a voice to people in literature and culture who had been ignored, expressing a developing sense of identity since it was not only Scottish language and literature that was being marginalized, Scots were being ignored politically as well.
This is Scotland, by Christ!
Welsh cites Evelyn Waugh as a big influence on his writing, one I can see in Filth with its focus on false bonhomie and male competition. With its scabrously funny rants, vernacular, stream of consciousness style, as well as its shock value, preoccupation with bodily functions, and biting humor and pessimism about humanity, Filth reminds me very much of Celine if he woke up nursing a hangover in Aberdeen.
Well, that's a good fucking laugh, isn't it?
I've never seen Welsh mention him as an influence, but Filth also reminded me of my favorite writer, Jim Thompson. Population 1280 in particular, about a scheming sheriff who portrays himself as a good old boy who manipulates and murders his way through the town to win re-election, all the while juggling multiple mistresses and overeating. Also Savage Night with its mentally and physically deteriorating protagonists and fragmented narrative. Before I talk about the movie... Okay. Filth was in development since the 2000s and considered by most to be completely unadaptable. When I first read the book, the movie reminded me of the most was Gaspar Noé's I Stand Alone. In 2013, Filth the movie was released to critical and audience acclaim in its native Scotland, spreading across Europe before being unceremoniously dumped straight to DVD distribution in the US. Robbo deserved better. Reminiscent of A Clockwork Orange, we get a shot of a band of men roving across a lawless urban landscape. In Clockwork Orange, the men were a gang of outlaws. But in this case, the outlaws are the police.
No, I'm not talking to dirty prostitutes again, Mum. You can't have the
James McAvoy stars in an outstanding performance as Bruce Robertson. This time, he's investigating the murder of a Japanese student instead of an African journalist and diplomat's son. I guess the financial people sent a memo around that it's less offensive to murder a Japanese person than an African person?
This is Looney Tunes.
While in the book, it's only implied that Bruce suffers from bipolar disorder or borderline personality disorder. In the film, Bruce is definitely bipolar and not taking his lithium. Instead of the tapeworm, we get increasingly unhinged hallucinations of his prescribing physician, Dr. Rossi, who comes off like a cross between Mr. Deltoid in Clockwork Orange and the guy from Malatesta's Carnival of Blood.
Now, about that pain. Yes?
I see the healthcare system in Scotland isn't much different than the healthcare system in America.
That'd be a joke.
First off, I think this is a great adaptation of a difficult-to-adapt novel. Baird amplified the dark comedy of Welsh's novel, and while it's lighter in tone, it's also more absurdist and surreal. Scenes that play as more harrowing in the book, such as this scene where Bruce coerces oral sex from a teenage drug dealer who happens to be the daughter of a lawyer adversary, play as more comedic.
Hell, Jesus Christ. Who taught you that technique? A fucking cheese grater? You got a good mind to tell your daddy now anyway after that poor excuse of an attempt.
Please don't, that's not fucking fair.
And, as a standard from a long novel adapted into film, characters and events are combined and some of their portrayals are altered. Some of Bruce's rougher edges have been sanded down. He's less grotesque than in the novel, and his racism has been majorly toned down. While in the book, Bruce underestimates Toll, in the film he's much more of the buffoon Bruce perceives him to be. Drummond in the book is more one of these. But in the film, she's more of an ambitious straight arrow type, who looks like she's about to grace the cover of Vogue. And despite disliking Bruce, she even offers him a bit of empathy.
I used to be good at this job, Amanda. I used to be a good person.
Yeah, I heard that.
The film also has much more manic pace to the point where it can feel like a Cliff Notes version of the book. I enjoyed the film, but I really found myself missing a lot of the quieter character study moments from the book. One thing I'll complain about, I hate that blown out video-y look the film uses, but that could just be me. But otherwise, I think it's a well shot film. You can tell Baird overflows with love for Stanley Kubrick.
You poster.
Many of the shot compositions and use of eye-popping primary colors mixed with cool blues reminds me of Clockwork Orange. Although this shot is giving me major Possession vibes. But the film's big ace is James McAvoy's performance as Bruce Robertson. He really sinks his teeth into this role with gusto. He's got rakish charm and is appropriately unhinged, but is also moving, capturing Bruce's vulnerability. Irvine Welsh was effusive over his performance, comparing McAvoy to Robert De Niro's performance in Taxi Driver.
Oh, yeah?
I'll admit that we don't have character actors anymore with great faces and funny voices, but the UK is keeping that alive, and we got a great supporting cast of them in this movie. I'll give special attention to Eddie Marsden as Bruce's nerdy best frenemy, Bladesy, and the great Shirley Henderson as Bladesy's domineering wife, Bunty.
I've had just about enough of you.
Join me in January for a celebration of an all-American auteur and a month of memories. Next month is Russ Meyer month. But until next time, stay sick.